Welcome to In the Gutter, a podcast that is all comics, all bangers, all the time, with story expert Lani Diane Rich and superhero scholar Joshua Unruh. One of the hosts has read almost no superhero comics, and the other has read almost all of them. We'll let you sort out which is which. And now, In the Gutter.
So I said, oh, so you want a Sega Genesis Mini? And they were like, no, I want an actual Genesis. And I was like, they're 30 years old. Okay. And I call my friend, and who is, or she was, before she moved out of Oklahoma City, she was a member of the Retro Gamer Society of Oklahoma City. Like, they had a convention. I did the convention a couple times. It was awesome. It was super fun. And she was like, let me see what I can do. And then she calls me back a couple of days later, and she's like, I need your mailing address. I'm sending you a Genesis. My final part of this anecdote for Christmas morning, for opening the presents, which I feel like you'll appreciate as a parent who entertains yourself at your children's expense to sometimes. Like, look, non-parents who are judging me right now, how many times have you made your dog, like, sit with a hot dog on its nose? Like, sometimes they're there for your fucking amusement, okay? It's just facts. So I wrap the Genesis in one box, and then I take the games and I tape them to the inside of a box that is so much bigger than is necessary. Not like huge bigger, but just like,
right? Because those were those like tiny little cartridges.
Yeah, they're this big.
Yeah.
They're like a little bigger than cassette tapes.
Yeah,
like they're thicker, but like that's the size. In fact, look, I just dated the shit out of myself.
I was gonna say, how many of our audience actually knows cassette tapes?
It's bigger than a cassette tape, but smaller than an 8-track. Fucking deal with it. So I tape the games to the side of this box and then wrap the box. So there's this box that's like a foot tall, you know, and feels like there's nothing in it, and no sound is made when you shake it. It's fantastic. So I gave them the Genesis box first, and they opened that, and they were all excited. And I said, I'm really sorry I couldn't find you any games. They're actually really hard to come by. Now, they called bullshit on that because they've been on eBay, but I was like, all right. And then I made them open up some other stuff that I had gotten for them, smaller things in between. And I was like, well, I guess you better do this one, you know, and they pick it up, and I open it, and they're like, games! And it was fantastic and hilarious because they thought they had a console they wouldn't be able to do anything with.
Oh, yeah, they clearly don't know you.
I don't know. In a million
years, you would give a kid a console with no games.
I mean, if they were really that hard to find, I would be like, you need to be happy I worked this one miracle, actually. But no, I was fucking with them. Yeah. But yeah, but my favorite part of this is that I went from, you want to fucking what? To within a week, yeah, what's your mailing address? I'm going to send you one. All right.
That's amazing.
Wizardry.
Absolutely. Well, okay, I guess that's just as good a segue into our Patsy Walker discussion as any. All right, so today we are reading Patsy Walker, Hellcat #2, Snowball Effect Part 2. Last week we had a discussion about how much I'm not particularly enjoying Patsy as a character. And you had a mini psychological experience from that.
I got a lot of, I may be discovering some things about myself that
stories are great for self-discovery. Great for self-discovery. But anyway, all the credits will be in the show notes. So anybody who wants to find out, get a link to this so they can read it for themselves and decide if I have a leg to stand on with my anti-Patsy stance. You can go ahead and find all that in the show notes. But I'm going to go ahead and give us a little bit of a summary of what happened in Snowball Effect #2. And this is what I think happens. Patsy fights a sea monster named Bessie. So we open with that. Bessie appears, and again, I read this as a couple of times and tried to figure out what was going on, but I have no idea. So Bessie appears to suck Patsy into the top of an igloo in the depths of the ocean, but when Patsy lands, the magical women inside say that she flew directly to the top of the tree. So I figure I missed something there, or there's something I'm not understanding. Then Patsy quips with the women, who tell her that they need her to rescue the daughter and heir of, I'm not sure, I think they're people, I guess. Anyway, they need Patsy to travel into a psychic overworld to rescue the heir from a monster called the Arulatak, a creature who consumes human flesh and then sends its victims back to devour their own family members. So sounds kind of like a zombie thing. Patsy is not dressed for the weather and wishes she had her luggage, and then it magically appears and she dresses while the women tell her that she needs to travel through 7 layers of something existence. I don't know, find 7 companions that could be anything to lend her their skin so that she can travel undetected. This is what I think is happening. Anyway, Patsy accepts the mission and is sent out to ride in an SUV with a dude from the bar who brought her to the bears, the dude that she called Trapper John and had left for dead in the middle of the snow. And is this all a dream? I don't know. Or is this how Patsy Walker experiences the world on a regular basis, where men just come to her and drive her places because, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so the women give Patsy a large talking stone artifact that they tell her is a map, but she insists is a calendar because it kind of has that Mayan calendar look to it. And then Patsy takes the SUV and drives off, and the artifact starts insulting her. So she leaves the wheel of a moving SUV to go into the back and threaten it. And then the SUV, completely unpredictable, who could have seen this coming, crashes, and she escapes it just in time to find a huge wolf monster with glowing eyes who calls her manslayer. And that's it for today, I guess. I don't know if I got any of that right. All right, so Joshua, did I get any of that right?
Close enough for funk.
All right, so what is your response to this issue?
Okay, I think it's weird and confusing on purpose, and I really like that because we're doing shamanic magic stuff.
Okay.
Like, that should legitimately not always make intellectual sense. Like, and it reminds me, the 7 women remind me of like the Weird Sisters in Discworld, except the Weird Sisters are often the main characters, so they have to make a little more sense for our sake. So this is like, what if the Weird Sisters were secondary characters and did not give a fuck if you understood what they were doing?
Well, yeah, no, definitely. I can see that weird sister energy going on.
So,
yeah,
I like that. Your mileage may vary. I mean, like, anyone's mileage may vary. But in this case, I don't like stories that don't make sense or people that just jabber, but also it's magic shit. And also, we're entering into kind of a fairy tale space, like where things are just going. I read somebody compare this to Alice in Wonderland, where it's like,
it definitely
the
has
things that
feel.
are going on around have a type of internal logic and consistency, but it is divorced from actual logic and consistency, Yes. And again, loving Patsy as I do, the fact that Patsy's just going to Patsy her way through that, I approve. I enjoy. So, yeah. So I like it, but you seem like, I don't know, are you lukewarm? Does the weirdness not work for you as well?
I haven't warmed up to Patsy.
Oh, well, no, of course not.
I think the incredible disrespect that she shows for these women, and when they tell her that this is a map, and she's like, no, it's a calendar. No, it's a calendar. It feels just like peak white lady to me, and so, as a white lady, maybe it shines some of that light back on me, and I need to like sit with that in that discomfort. But the point is, Patsy just irritates me through the whole thing, just continues to irritate me. She's obnoxious. She's rude. She's disrespectful. And she seems like, how do I say it? Like lacking the ability to sit and think about what's going on and and deal with it in a way that makes any sense whatsoever. So I am still struggling to love Patsy at this point. I think that I kind of like the Alice in Wonderland comparison because that kind of opens up, like last week we opened up a space for you psychologically to kind of like think about why you love Patsy. And I think that maybe this week it's my turn to think about why I dislike Patsy so much. And when, you talk about Alice in Wonderland, which is another story that I have never enjoyed. Like, I've never liked Alice in Wonderland. I like the Cheshire Cat. And
I don't think I knew that.
Yeah.
I might have recommended a different story if I'd known that. But go on.
But it does give me insight, though. Like, because I grew up in a family that was not exactly friendly with truth or reality or anything. It was always, reality was constantly shifting for me as a kid. Like, one day to be one thing, and the next day my mother would be like, no, that never happened. Like gaslighty shit like that, right? So I have a real aversion to stories in which reality is malleable without a deep explanation and without a world building concept that anchors that in rules, so that even when it's unpredictable, there are rules behind it, right? And here I feel like we have Patsy, moving through the world very much the way that Alice in Wonderland does, where all the rules are constantly changing and nothing seems to make any sense, and I don't understand what's going on. And I think that part of that reality distortion warp that Patsy sort of has around her may be part of why I'm not really connecting with this story. And that might be something that I need to sit with my therapist, and kind of work that stuff out.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, as a reason that you might bounce off the sort of non-plot that we know what we're doing. She's moving in a straight, we have an A and a B, but it will not be a straight line between them. And the fact that it cannot be a straight line between them may be a thing that, I mean, I don't know if it's like to unpack with your therapist, but I'm like, I can see why you would bounce off that. For what it's worth, shit is weird around Patsy, but shit is weird around Patsy in the way that shit's weird around most superheroes, maybe a little more supernatural for her. And she is a person to whom things happen, right? Yeah. Now, part of that's like putting herself in a place. Like, I'm the Beast's lab assistant. Hey, can I be a superhero? 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 And then what do you know? Eventually there's an opportunity for her to be a superhero. But it's still, she puts herself in the position, but then she very much is a thing, a person to whom things happen. I do not want to discount at all the sort of racial difference. Obviously, I think there is something. I think it was 2015 when this was published, and I might read it a little differently if it was new to me now. I also think it's worth pointing out that these 7 women are being cryptic on purpose and are lying to her sometimes from sentence to sentence. Like, they don't agree with one another perfectly. And so I can kind of excuse some of Patsy's, like, can we just, look, you're all full of shit, but you want me to go save this person. Can we skip to the part where I get to do the part that I understand? Can we just move to where I have traction? Is like, I don't want to like throw away the read where, white lady doesn't listen to indigenous people, but also these specific indigenous people are being really fucking confusing on purpose. So I can share the frustration.
All right, you know what? Like, fair enough. And honestly, like, when the map starts, like, talking shit to Patsy, I actually really do enjoy that. I really do enjoy them. The map feels like a character stand-in for how I'm feeling at the moment. And so it's nice to have that in there. But let's go ahead and...
watch that space. I want to come back to that statement.
Well,
I refuse to deal with that right now. You need to read the rest of the series, but everybody remember Lani said that.
Okay, everybody remember I said that. All right, so here we have like our notes, like we have our notes, we share our notes, you review my notes, and I have done it again, where I take the title page. This is a
Kindle fault, not your
cover. Fault. No, I'm pretty sure last time, even when I went through the Kindle, I discovered that it was there as the cover art, and I just got confused between the cover art and the title page. So I'm going to let you open up talking about the cover art, because what I talked about was the title page. So
remember that we are going to have a pretty significant artistic disconnect between the covers and the interiors, because it's two very different artists, right? So for the future, if you're looking at something and thinking, oh, this is the cover, but it looks like the rest of the interior art, it's not the cover.
Right.
Okay. So this cover is once again a Stuart Immonen drawn piece, which is very different than LaFuente's interiors. I really like it. Again, it's Patsy being awesome. She's actually fighting Bessie on the cover, so it's a little more action oriented. And it's a little more of what's actually going on in the book. I will say also, Immonen trends. I don't think that I could say Immonen is photorealistic in the way that Epting kind of trends, but it's closer to that than it is to LaFuente's more like loose cartoony style. And I feel like there's a lot of energy on this cover, even though it's closer to that photorealism. And I only bring that up to point out that, again, like, I like that approach, but that those folks tend to be a little flatter, a little less dynamic in the action. But I think Immonen is serving both of those masters really well in this cover. So now that I have linked you the actual cover.
Yes, and I can look at the actual cover. I love this
Tell
cover.
me how you feel about that. Yeah, it's really good.
I love the cover.
Really
I think
good.
it's really cool. We have, I love her hair as being kind of like a fire image, you know? And so I think that is really cool. So we're deep under the water, you know, with this sea monster. And basically it's all, Bessie is all tentacles all day. That's like basically what Patsy is struggling with. And there's something about Patsy, like, you know, she's wearing kind of like a Batman style visor over the top of her head. Then there is flame in her hair coming out into the water, which I really like. And we also see a reflection of Patsy in Betsy. So we see those colors, the warm colors reflecting into the gray, blue, black of Bessie, the sea monster. And I also love that we have a sea monster named Bessie. So like when I look at Patsy in this context, also she's got kind of a grimace on her face. So
she's working. Yeah,
she's working really hard. And the thing is with Patsy, it feels like she just kind of la-di-da's her way through life, and nothing is an effort for her. It just sort of like, oh, I guess I'll just do this now. And like, that's kind of how the interior art is really getting her across. But here we have her in a fight, working really hard, flame coming out of her, that flame reflecting even underwater, like it cannot be put out, you know, even underwater it's reflecting on Bessie, on this monster that she has to fight. And I actually really love the energy of that cover. I'm not sure that it represents what's going on inside the book or inside the issue.
It's like a Rashomon. It's like the same thing but through a very different lens.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
So I love that. And then like when I was talking about the title page when I was putting my notes in here in the script. But the title page has like a representation of her psychic imagining of both Iron Man and Reuben superimposed over her fight with Bessie. And I kind of like the way that it's pulling in these elements because it seems to me like my experience of Patsy in these issues that we're reading is that she is bouncing from thing to thing to thing to thing, and nothing is really pulled together. But here we have, you know, what she was doing when she got the call, and then who she got the call from that started this whole thing. And so we do have a sense of like a thematic, at least, or a consciousness within her of how she got to where she is right now. Where to me, the vibe of the story has been Patsy just, you know, blithely bounces from one thing to the next and can only focus on what's in front of her and doesn't see the connective tissue. So it feels like there is a sense of there being an overall consciousness for Patsy of all of the things that got her where she is. So I actually kind of like that. I mean, I really do like the title page and the cover art, maybe some of my favorite things, you know.
I really like too, as I think more about this Alice in Wonderland thing, I really like that those memories aren't really memories because both mental Iron Man and mental Reuben start talking dream gibberish, you know, and it's again another note that we are entering a space where things aren't going to work like they ought to work. It's like, whether she likes it or not, this is the drink me and eat me You know, like she's going to go through this hole at the bottom of the ocean and wind up on top of the tree. The hell does that mean? It means what it means.
It means what it means.
You know, the mysterious dream shit that Ruben and Iron Man say to you may matter. File that away. I mean, you know, it's like we're entering into a very dreamy fantasy quality, you know, on purpose, which again, your mileage may vary wildly.
Well, I have to say, like, I love the art, you know, I love that cartoony art that Lafuentes is bringing to this. So the interior is, as much as I, you know, like, I don't really appreciate Patsy as a character. I haven't developed the appreciation as of this reading. But I do love the way that the art is drawn. I like the colors and the energy and the fun of it all. So like I definitely enjoy the colors and the artwork in the interior.
I second all of that, but I want to draw direct attention to the way that Lafuentes lays out a page, and not just in the panel to panel flow, which is legitimately very good. Whether you would understand the story, I don't know, but I could hand this to somebody who'd never read comics, and I think they would be able to follow the page flows. But we get another fashion show, and again, this fight with Bessie with like dream stuff superimposed over it. The page layout work in this book is top tier.
Yeah.
You look at Lafuentes and you think, oh, there's a ton of energy and dynamism. They're going to be great at superhero stuff. And they are, because all of that verve is in there. But it's also, these pages are not boring. Like they are laid out really cleverly just at the layout stage. And I think that title page and the fashion show both really bring that out. Even if the fashion show is low-key an excuse to do a bunch of gibberish exposition without us getting bored, I don't care. You fucking did it. I'm intrigued, you know, so yeah, just really good interior work.
Yeah, no, really, really good. I'm so loving the artwork, loving the way that it flows, loving the way that it tells this story. But I still have to say, like, I'm still at this point where I'm like, I'm really not sure how to respond to Patsy. You know, this all feels like a fever dream. And once again, like, I'm locking into your Alice in Wonderland comparison, because I think that hang
on to that. I think that'll be useful.
Similar energy. And I think that there is definitely I have a resistance to that, like I talked about. You know, but Patsy is coming off like entitled white lady asshole to me, and I feel like I'm missing something. But I really just like, she's so irritating to me. Like her entire energy just grates on me so hard. And I think that gives me difficulty along with the Alice in Wonderland sort of story space, which is something again that like is a me thing. Like there's clearly Alice in Wonderland is a classic for a lot of reasons, and people attach to it and understand it. And being in a psychedelic space is a great way to be able to look at reality through a context that is not real. And, you know, through a lens that is not about reality, but it's about like what everything means. I think that that's incredibly valuable. The fact that it doesn't appeal to me is a me thing. That's a my psychology thing, you know? So I don't know, like I'm really struggling to care about Patsy at this point. And like, I don't really know how to respond to like this whole thing. Yeah,
that's a real thing. I will say that, you know, at this point, I think I can definitively say that fever dream stuff is intentional. Like whether that works for you or not, huge question, but they're doing it on purpose. I think it's true for everybody in the story in different ways. Like I think it's true for Patsy because she does tend to avoid her problems both internally. Well, she avoids her internal problems by, you know, bouncing around and punching stuff, you know, on the outside. But it's also really appropriate for, well, let me say this broadly, because shamanic traditions across different cultures are not the same, but they honestly do share, you know, some similarities. There's some interconnectedness in those Venn diagrams. And the fact that everything is kind of, as you say, psychedelic or altered reality is in line with some of how shamanic traditions see the world. So I actually kind of love that. And again, from that perspective, I see Patsy as the one who is trying to impose some kind of order on that. She knows it's hopeless. She's fucked with magic people before. Yeah. She knows that it's low-key hopeless, but she still needs a couple of handles. Like, can you just point me in a general direction? Like, I get it. The gibberish time is over, you know, which again, with a couple of layers could read differently, but that's really the way that I see her approaching this. Like, just give me something to hang on to, you know?
Right. And
they are studiously not doing that.
Right. But they are, you know, like they're asking her to do something for them, you know, and they're trying to give her the tools to do it. And amongst themselves, they are arguing about whether Patsy is even up to the task and able to do this, and if Patsy's the right person and all of that. I actually like the magical seven, a magical number. We've got 7 of these ladies in there. I really love that. I love that they're all arguing with each other and none of them is really sure about, you know, if this is the right thing, but why the hell not, right? You know, they're like
mean aunties.
They are, and I kind of love it. I kind of dig the energy, you know? But the way that Patsy speaks to them, I mean, it feels very like, you know, a white mockery of indigenous people. At the same time, the, you know, perfect, magical, you know, person of color, be it indigenous or black or whatever, and especially putting women in that state. Like, I like the fact that we have, you know, women of color, specifically indigenous women, who are saying, no, you're going to do something for me, bitch. You're like, you're going to do this for me. I like that. But the way that Patsy speaks to them, the fact that, like, you know, she's saying it's a calendar when they say it's a map, like, this is their magical world. Like, you are in their magical world. If they tell you it's something, run with that. Like, just believe them, you know? And so, like, the dismissal of what they say, of the tool that they're trying to give her, all of that to me, I was like, you know, this is so really super irritating. And so, but I really like, I like the ladies. I like that they are also, as I am, ambivalent about Patsy and her value, you know? So I really feel like, you know, like understood in that way. I like that they're saying, we need you to do this thing for us. Go fetch, girl, you know, get us our princess and our heir, you know. So I like all of that, but just Patsy's attitude, Patsy's response, and again, more of this like la-di-da, I'm going to Scarlett O'Hara my way through life, you know, kind of thing. Like all of that, and you know, and like I appreciate the fashion show. Like, I wish I had my luggage, and then suddenly it's there, and now she's trying on all of these things, and she once again is centering herself in everything. And that to me is like, you know, I mean, like, I love the artwork of it, I love the visuals of it, I love, you know, like the way that the pages flow and all of that. But Patsy is she's working my last nerve. I just don't, I care about these women, and I love them fighting, and I love them being cranky, and I even love them being rude. Like, it doesn't bother me, you know? But Patsy's whole, you know, like centering herself in absolutely everything just irritates me.
Yeah, that's interesting. I feel like there are a couple of ways that you could read this interaction, and it really depends on how much you appreciate Patsy or don't, right? So there is a reading here where everything is so weird around her that she grabs the only life preserver she has, which is her indomitable personality, which whatever you can think about it, you can hate that personality, but it is definitely indomitable.
Yeah, it is
like,
that.
So, I mean, there's a way you can read that where it was like, well, they're all being cryptic and shitty. So she is sarcastic back and just tries to get them to give her some handles so she can get the job done. And again, also, this is informed a little bit by the wider aspect that people who are not themselves magical, but this is a thing I think across genres, but you do see this in superhero stuff a lot, is that people who are not themselves inherently magical but have to deal with magical people are like, can you just calm the actual fuck down? And talk like a normal person. Like that, that's the thing. I think you see that off and on throughout Supernatural, that it's that the two main characters are like, we just want to murder it, not understand it, you know? And that when they have to deal with somebody who's like, it's a larger world. No, it isn't. I just want to fucking kill it. Or if you've read like the Dresden Files, like there are a lot of mundane characters in there that are like, Harry, shut the fuck up and tell us what we have to do. Right. So I, again, broader genre knowledge and appreciating that Patsy's just like, the only thing I can hang on to is me, works for me.
Right.
I can absolutely see where that is not at all, working for you.
Right.
And the fact that a lot of the stuff that the ladies say to her, to Patsy, will 100% matter in unexpected ways, both positive and negative, like both things where they shot her straight and where they did not.
Yeah.
But none of that is in this issue yet. So all and again, this is part of the joy and pain of serialized fiction.
Yeah.
Is that I mean, I know that there are podcasts that look at books on a chapter by chapter basis, but I also think usually, maybe I could be wrong, but usually they talk about that chapter as part of the wider whole.
Right.
We don't do that here, which is fine. But it changes the tone of the conversation when you can see how all the pieces fit together.
And I love that.
I don't know that it would redeem it for you. So I'm not like suggesting we'll get to the end and you'll be like, never mind, I love Patsy. But you might be like, oh yeah, they were actually completely bullshitting her on some percentage of this, so her skepticism is reasonable in hindsight. Anyway,
I don't know that I would necessarily define it as skepticism, but I get it. And also like the idea that one of the things that I love is when I'm engaging with a story and I don't get it and I don't get it and I don't get it, and then all of a sudden you get to the end and everything fits together and you're like, ooh, and it changes your whole perspective on everything. Like that's one of my favorite things, and I'm definitely holding space for that. Like as an outcome of this experience and of this discussion, and I, it's like, I want to like Patsy, like I want to be into it. And also like part of it too could be that I just don't get it yet. Like I don't understand it yet. And I've had that experience a lot too, where I've bounced really hard off of things. And then once I understood them, I could engage with them in a way that made them extremely meaningful for me. So like I am absolutely holding that space. I'm saying this is my reaction in this moment with this kind of limited viewpoint that I have of this character from just these issues. And there's definitely stuff that I like and stuff that I'm enjoying. It's just that Patsy herself, like, it's not one of those things.
I certainly don't want to overpromise, especially when we are in issue 2 of 5 here. But I would be really interested, once we've kind of laid this foundation of a Patsy that is true to herself, I feel is true to the character, but that you don't love. And then her other big, like, sort of re-injection into mainstream Marvel in the last 10 years or so is when she started working with She-Hulk as the investigator for She-Hulk's attorney firm. But when they first run into each other to get drinks and catch up, they are both at very low moments. Yeah. And so you see this kind of like vulnerability where you can tell Patsy realizes that life is complicated. In fact, she realizes it's so fucking complicated, she just refuses to deal with the complexity as much of the time as she can. I'd be interested in this as a foundation for like that vulnerable moment, and then she bounces back and like, fuck yeah, we can do this, and She-Hulk's like, fuck, I guess we're doing this. Well,
yeah, I mean, the vulnerability is definitely a huge part of connecting. Like, vulnerability is how we connect with each other. Anybody who wants to learn more about that, I would absolutely recommend Brene Brown's work on vulnerability and shame. But I mean, that's part of, I think, also what is going on with Patsy in these couple of issues is that I have not seen any vulnerability from her.
You're not going to get a lot.
Yeah,
you're gonna get some. You're gonna get some, but more as a reflection in other characters. Yeah. I don't want to say she's not a character in her own story. I will just say she's really true to who she usually is. Right. I got to say usually because lots of people have written her.
Yes.
But you do see reflections of this when she meets people who are unsure or vulnerable. You don't get it with the map in this one, but you will even get it with the map.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I like that.
So watch that space.
All right, so Joshua, here we are at my favorite part of all of my podcasts, which is where I talk about what my favorite part of whatever it is that we're talking about. That's when we do that. So again, we have two. We have favorite art. And then the favorite part of the story, the favorite story beat. And for me, I have to say, like, my favorite art in this, as much as like the fashion show is not my favorite character moment for Patsy. The spread, the way that they drew this at La Fuente's is just amazing. She's getting changed. We have women in these little, bubbles where we see their faces, and then they're talking and they're giving her instruction as she's getting changed. And so a couple of things that I love about this. One, just the artwork itself, just the visual, representation of it is absolutely gorgeous. I love the way it's put together. It's that 2-page spread, which I really love. But the other thing that I really like about this is that it does show Patsy while she's, engaging in this, in this like apparently narcissistic, let me change all my clothes in front of you and show you how beautiful I am moment. It is interspersed with all of these women and everything that they're saying, and she is listening. She is while she seems to not be paying attention to them, she is absorbing what they're saying to her. And that is part of whereas in a 2-page spread of her getting changed, I would expect it to be just her, just Patsy, center of the spread, absolutely center of the world, everything. But we do have these women and this mission that she's on now as a big part of the consciousness that she's having, because I believe that this 2-page spread is very much from her POV, Yeah. And I appreciated that. I appreciated that she's listening. I appreciated that even when it seems like she is completely in a narcissistic bubble, that she is listening, that she is absorbing, that she is thinking about what she's going to do. And she's preparing to go on the mission and help them. And so, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I like that.
That I feel is like a real insight into Patsy's character. If that, and I'm not asking you to do this, but that level of charity for what's going on in that, applied broadly, I think really gets the positive stuff that I like about Patsy. I want to piggyback just a bit on that, in that this is an inversion of a thing I've mentioned on other podcasts that I love when superheroes do. So I love when superheroes have to do super shit in regular clothes. Yeah. This is kind of an inversion of that, because every outfit she puts on is over her Hellcat costume. So it's, I apparently also like accessorizing superhero stuff with completely mundane civilian things. And now I just want more Spider-Man in a scarf pictures.
Well, it gets cold on top of those buildings.
That's what I'm saying. Spandex doesn't keep you warm. Come on.
I mean, come on. Yeah.
So my favorite art is actually your title page.
Yeah.
It's the hallucination / memory of Iron Man and Ruben. Yeah. They're black and white. They're white outlines on black over the very colorful foreground is really striking as a visual, and goes a long way to suggesting the kind of weirdness that we're getting into. And I really appreciate it, because later on, when the 7 women show her the fantasy world that she's going to have to move through, it looks different than the regular art, but also looks different than her hallucinations with Iron Man and Ruben. Again, that comes back to all this layers that La Fuentes is doing with this art. Yeah. In her own memory, it's white on black, very interesting, even when they're being weird. Her regular life is kind of colorful and bubbly and pastel, and then the fantasy world is even more so. It's just, the layers are great. I love all of that. What is your favorite story part, Lani?
Oh my God. I have to say that this hit me in the face. How much I loved this one little moment in the midst of all this stuff that I was really kind of struggling to love. We have this from the women. Belief is for the unknowable. Fear is for what we do know. The wind, the ice, the dark. We know what you are for us. Holy shit. That is so incredibly powerful. And it's a little cryptic. Is she going to be the destruction of y'all? Is her bringing this princess back going to be the thing that ends an era for you? Like, is it like, what is she going to do? And I love this. Belief is for the unknowable. Fear is for what we do know. Like, you could spend an entire day just unpacking that shit, you know?
Yeah.
I absolutely love it. I think it is absolutely brilliant writing. And I love this very deeply anchored moment in a story that has been so wildly spun out, you know, that there's just this moment of a deep anchoring in meaning and what Patsy means to them, you know, from I suppose she'll do, you know, I suppose she'll do, right? That like, I guess we'll work with this one, you know, for whatever it is that we need. But these women they have a mission that is deeply, deeply meaningful to them. And we don't know what that meaning is yet, because we're just being like slapped in the face with whatever garment Patsy's throwing around, you know? But I love that moment, and I'm still in that moment. Like, that is the thing that anchors me into the story. And I have to say that is the moment where I'm like, all right, I'm in. Like, I'm in. I don't care. Like, it doesn't matter how I feel about Patsy. I'm interested in what's going on with these women.
That's a tremendous line. I really like that from their perspective, that they finally settle out of their own. They're still cryptic, but they've settled out of their bickering bullshit. You know, amongst themselves, to say, okay, but this is actually really important.
Yeah.
We did bring you here for a reason. I think my favorite story part is, what do you know, a Patsy moment when, and this is a line that I feel like could resonate through a lot of superhero stuff. When somebody, which you have yourself, somebody bounces a little bit off the gooder than good. But I'm also like, but superheroes should be aspirational. And so there's this moment where she's like, just because I'm optimistic doesn't mean I'm stupid. I just love, I mean, Superman could say that and it be true, and it means something. He'd say it really different than Patsy would, but Patsy could say it. Green Lantern could say it. Spider-Man could say it. You know, you know, your D&D joke here is that lawful good doesn't mean lawful stupid. You know, like, yeah, I appreciated that. And again, it comes back to what I feel Patsy is largely doing in this space, which is holding on to the only solid thing she has, which is herself.
Yeah.
You know, as unstable as that may be, it's more stable than what's going on around her.
But it's knowable. Like, for her, that is the knowable thing. And if she's traipsing into, you know, these magical, mystical places where the rules suddenly aren't the rules anymore, holding on to the thing that is knowable, that is herself, and knowing herself really well, like, I think that's admirable. You know, I think that is a really great quality. So yeah, I mean, you know, I'm not dismissing Patsy yet. I might learn
this
to love
sounds
her.
like I'm trying to convince you, and more it's just like, she's 100% my viewpoint here.
Right. But this is what you love. And I appreciate that. You know, like, I think that there's good reason to do it. Just because I don't like it doesn't mean that there's anything like wrong about you loving it. So you know, absolutely not. And I want to get to that love. I really want to figure it out. And that gets me a little bit closer. To loving Patsy. All right. We'll be back next week with Snowball Effect number 3, in which Patsy starts to eat a little metaphorical crow in order to make it up to a literal but magical polar bear. She also learns to read the map, and if you can believe it, things get a little bit weirder. Until then, never, never, never go swimming with possessed and possibly mythical creatures by yourself in Alaska.
Rock solid advice. Life lessons.
Thanks for listening to In the Gutter with Joshua Unruh and Lani Diane Rich. If you enjoyed this podcast, please consider talking about it with your friends, leaving a review somewhere, or supporting Chipperish Media, patreon.com/Chipperish.